surprise Beatrice. Instead, I found my son Jasper celebrating with champagne while my wife crawled across the floor, desperately reaching for the outdoor water spigot. Her walker lay sideways like she'd collapsed trying to get there. Jasper was toasting something completely unaware I was watching. My wife looked up at me with confused, desperate eyes. 38 years building my business empire, and I'd never seen a betrayal this twisted. What I did next would destroy everything he'd ever built and send him where he belonged. Before I tell you how this betrayal unfolded, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching this story from? I want to know how far this message about family betrayal reaches. The fog was rolling in from Monterey Bay as I navigated the coastal highway back to Carmel by the Sea, my headlights cutting through the December evening mist. What should have been a routine overnight trip to Portland had turned into a marathon of delayed flights and rescheduled meetings. All I wanted was to get home to Beatrice and see how she was managing. 6 weeks since her disc replacement surgery, and she was still struggling with the walker, still dependent on others for basic tasks. That's why I'd asked Jasper and Autumn to check on her while I was away. Just for a couple of days, make sure she had groceries, help with anything she couldn't reach. Having a nurse practitioner daughter-in-law felt like a blessing when your wife was recovering from major back surgery. I pulled into our circular driveway, the warm glow from our living room windows promising the comfort I'd been craving all day. 38 years building Blackwood properties from nothing, turning a single Fresno strip mall into 19 commercial developments across California and Nevada. And I still felt that sense of relief every time I came home to our craftsman-style house. The garage door hummed quietly as I grabbed my overnight bag. That's when I heard it. Laughter echoing from our living room. Not Beatrice's gentle chuckle, but something deeper, more celebratory. Jasper's laugh. I paused at the kitchen door listening. Our 35-year-old son and his wife lived 15 minutes away, but Friday evening celebrations weren't their usual style. What I saw when I stepped into the hallway froze me in place. Beatrice was crawling across our polished hardwood floor, her back brace twisted awkwardly, one hand reaching desperately toward the French doors leading to our patio. Her walker lay abandoned on its side near the doorway. She was trying to reach the outdoor water spigot, I realized with growing horror. 20 feet away in our living room, Jasper stood with a champagne flute raised high, his face flushed with satisfaction. Autumn sat on our leather sofa, her own glass catching the lamplight. They were toasting something completely unaware that I was standing in the shadows, watching my wife crawl like an injured animal, while my son celebrated some private victory. To new beginnings, Jasper was saying, his voice carrying that smooth marketing confidence, and a family finally making the right choices. Beatrice looked up at me, then her eyes meeting mine across the hardwood expanse. What I saw there hit harder than any failed business deal I'd ever absorbed. Confusion, shame, and underneath it all, a desperate plea that seemed to say, help me understand what's happening to me. The people I'd trusted to care for her were celebrating while she suffered on our floor. 38 years in commercial real estate had taught me to read situations quickly, to spot the signs when something didn't add up. The numbers never lied, whether they appeared on balance sheets or in the subtle details of human behavior. My son was celebrating while my wife crawled for water. I needed to understand why. I crouched in the shadows of our hallway, my heart pounding as I processed the scene before me. Every instinct screamed at me to rush forward and confront Jasper, but 38 years in business had taught me something more valuable than righteous anger. The power of information gathered in darkness. Beatrice's eyes found mine across the room. I pressed my finger to my lips, then touched my heart. Our old signal from when the kids were young and we needed silent communication during their tantrums. Her slight nod told me she understood. Whatever was happening, she needed to trust me and stay quiet. Instead of revealing myself, I retreated silently through the kitchen and slipped back to the garage. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Mrs. Henderson, it's Preston Blackwood. I'm calling from Portland. My meetings are running later than expected, and I'm worried about Beatrice. Oh, Preston, what can I do to help? Would it be possible for you to check on her tonight? Jasper and Autumn are there, but you know how Beatrice gets. She won't want to bother them if she needs something. Margaret Henderson had been our neighbor for 8 years, a retired registered nurse who'd become invaluable during Beatrice's recovery. More importantly, she was someone I trusted completely. Of course, dear. I'll head over in a few minutes. Thank you, Margaret. I'll try to catch an earlier flight tomorrow, but these client meetings... I let my voice trail off, playing the stressed businessman stuck in a distant city. From the garage, I could hear Jasper's laughter growing louder, more relaxed. The champagne was having its effect. Good. Drunk people made mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. "Dad's still in Portland. Mom seems confused about when you're coming back." I typed quickly. "Flight delayed again. Won't be home until Saturday afternoon. Thanks for watching her." His response, "No problem. Everything's under control here." Under control. The phrase made my skin crawl. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Henderson's Honda pulled into our driveway. I watched through the garage window as she knocked on the front door, heard Jasper's surprised voice as he let her in. The celebration in our living room shifted to forced normalcy in the presence of an unexpected witness. I waited another hour listening to voices grow quieter, more slurred. Jasper had always been a lightweight with alcohol. By 10:30, I could hear Mrs. Henderson's authoritative voice taking charge, helping Beatrice to bed, settling in for the night watch. The living room fell silent, except for occasional glass, clinking and low murmuring. Perfect. I slipped my key into the kitchen door lock, turning it with practiced silence. The house felt different now. Violated somehow, as if the very air had been poisoned by whatever scheme was unfolding under my roof. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Jasper slumped on our leather sofa, champagne glass dangling from his fingers. Autumn was curled up in the armchair, breathing deeply. The alcohol had done its work. Now I could begin mine. I moved like a ghost through my own home, starting with the obvious. The water system that had left my wife crawling across our floor. The main shutoff valve was in our utility room, and what I found there confirmed my worst suspicions. Someone with knowledge of residential plumbing had partially closed the main line, reducing pressure throughout the house while leaving the outdoor spigot connected to a separate line, running at full capacity. This wasn't system failure. This was deliberate torture designed to make my wife suffer while I was away. The question now was, what else had they planned? The next morning brought clarity that the fog-shrouded night had stolen from me. I sat in my Explorer across the street from our house, watching through binoculars as Jasper backed his Toyota out of our driveway at 8:45 sharp. His marketing firm expected him by 9, and punctuality had always been one of his few reliable traits. 15 minutes later, Autumn emerged in her hospital scrubs coffee travel mug in hand, heading for her Saturday shift at Community Hospital. I waited another 10 minutes, making sure neither would return for forgotten items before approaching our front door. Mrs. Henderson greeted me with the kind of relief only a trusted neighbor could provide. "Preston, thank goodness you caught an early flight." Beatrice had a rough night. Kept asking for water, but the pressure in the kitchen was barely a trickle. "How is she now?" "Sleeping peacefully. I gave her the prescribed pain medication around 6 this morning." She gathered her overnight bag with practiced efficiency. "That son of yours seemed awfully interested in when you'd be returning. Asked me 3 times if I'd heard from you." After Mrs. Henderson left, I began my investigation with the methodical approach that had built my real estate empire. Evidence first, emotions later. Jasper's childhood bedroom had been converted into a home office years ago, but he still used it when visiting. What I found there painted a picture more disturbing than I'd imagined. Property deeds photocopied and spread across the desk, with our home's assessed value highlighted in yellow marker. Bank statements with handwritten calculations in the margins. Our checking account balance, savings account, totals, investment portfolio estimates. Insurance policies lay stacked nearby, each one bookmarked at the beneficiary information pages. Someone had been studying our financial structure like a business acquisition target. In the kitchen, I discovered Autumn's contribution to their scheme. Medical evaluation forms for cognitive assessment, the kind used to determine mental competency for legal proceedings. Printed screenshots from cell phone videos. Images of Beatrice looking confused, struggling with simple tasks, appearing disoriented in our own home. These weren't candid moments captured by chance. They were staged evidence carefully curated to support a narrative of decline. Assisted living facility brochures were neatly organized in a manila folder with monthly costs circled in red ink. Sunset Manor, Golden Years, Community, Peaceful Harbor Residence, each one specializing in memory care and assisted living transitions. The cheapest option was $7,200 monthly, but the utility bills told the most damning story. 3 weeks of systematically reduced water usage corresponding exactly with my business trips to Sacramento, San Jose, and Nevada. Someone had been manipulating our water pressure every time I left town, creating artificial hardship that would support their case for Beatrice needing professional care. The final pieces lay hidden in a manila envelope tucked behind our coffee maker. Draft guardianship petitions with our names already filled in. Power of attorney documents granting Jasper control over our financial decisions. A timeline spreadsheet titled Asset Liquidation Schedule, with projected dates for selling our house, cashing out investments, and transferring funds to care facility accounts. This wasn't desperation or a spur-of-the-moment scheme born from financial pressure. This was a calculated business plan months in the making, designed to systematically strip away our independence and wealth, while appearing to act in our best interests. I photographed every document with my phone, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. 38 years of marriage, 35 years of fatherhood, and this was how my son repaid the trust we'd placed in him. But understanding the scope of their betrayal was only the beginning. Now I needed to know why. The afternoon sun slanted through our kitchen windows as I continued searching for the why behind their systematic betrayal. Jasper's wallet, left carelessly on his desk, contained a business card that made my blood run cold. Phoenix Grant Attorney at Law, Elder Care Transitions, Compassionate Family Solutions. The card was worn from handling with 12% management fee, standard rate, written on the back in Jasper's handwriting. 12% of our $8.2 million estate would be nearly $1 million in legal fees. His laptop was still logged into his email account. What I found there explained everything. Credit card statements showing $180,000 in debt across 7 different cards. Bank overdraft notices dating back 6 months. Loan default papers from multiple financial institutions. But the gambling evidence was what truly terrified me. Printed emails from offshore betting websites with names I couldn't pronounce. Payment demand letters from organizations that clearly operated outside normal legal channels. The language was polite but unmistakably menacing. Mr. Blackwood, your account remains significantly past due. Our associates have been monitoring your family real estate situation in California and understand you may have access to liquid assets through inheritance acceleration. We strongly encourage prompt resolution to avoid more direct collection methods. A yellow sticky note on his monitor showed the total in Jasper's handwriting. $520,000. $340,000 owed to international gaming partners. These weren't legitimate creditors. These were criminals who collected debts through violence. The Phoenix Grant email exchanges revealed the full scope. The attorney specialized in compassionate family transitions, helping families make difficult decisions about elderly care while managing asset liquidation. His website featured testimonials from families who'd found peace of mind knowing their aging parents were receiving professional care while estates were being responsibly managed. The business model was elegant in its cruelty. Identify families with significant assets and elderly parents. Create situations demonstrating the parents' inability to live independently. File for emergency guardianship. Move elderly into expensive care facilities. Liquidate assets for care costs, while skimming 12% management fees. Jasper hadn't invented this scheme. He'd been recruited into it. The timeline was clear from months of correspondence. Gambling debts started small, then escalated. When traditional borrowing was exhausted, someone connected him with Phoenix Grant. The attorney had identified our family as ideal candidates. Wealthy elderly parents, adult child with access, wife with medical background to provide credible testimony. The most chilling email was dated 3 weeks ago. Patient observation phase should continue until subject demonstrates clear inability to maintain independent living. Document all incidents of confusion, physical limitation, and safety concerns. Medical professional testimony will be crucial for expedited guardianship approval. They'd been systematically torturing my wife to create evidence for their legal case. My son wasn't just stealing from us. He was part of a criminal enterprise that preyed on vulnerable elderly people. And now that enterprise was operating inside my home, targeting my wife, threatening everything we'd built together. The question was no longer why they were doing this. The question was how to stop them before they destroyed more than just our family. After gathering enough evidence to understand the full scope of their criminal conspiracy, I quietly left our house before Jasper and Autumn returned from their Saturday evening plans. There was no time to waste. Every moment they remained free to operate was another moment my wife remained in danger. Sunday morning found me sitting across from Isabel Kane in her downtown Monterey office, surrounded by law books and the weight of 15 years of professional trust. She'd agreed to meet on her day off after hearing the urgency in my voice, and now she studied the photographs and documents I'd spread across her mahogany desk with the focused intensity that had made her one of California's most respected estate attorneys. "This is textbook elder abuse with criminal conspiracy," she said, setting down a printed email from Phoenix Grant. "Your son didn't stumble into this scheme, Preston. He was recruited by professionals who've done this before." The evidence I'd gathered painted a picture that even I hadn't fully grasped until seeing it laid out in Isabel's office. The systematic water pressure manipulation, the staged medical evidence, the financial research, the criminal gambling debts, the elder law attorney with his 12% fee structure. It was a comprehensive assault on our family designed to appear like concerned children helping aging parents. "What can we do?" I asked, though I suspected Isabel was already formulating a strategy. "First, we build an impenetrable legal fortress around your assets," she said, pulling out forms I recognized from our original trust documents. "Irrevocable trust amendments that permanently exclude Jasper from any inheritance rights, effective immediately. We revoke every power of attorney authorization he's ever had. We create asset protection measures that are retroactive, preventing any claims based on actions taken before today." She worked with the efficiency of someone who'd handled similar cases, updating bank notifications to prevent unauthorized access attempts, restructuring our trust to create what she called fortress-level protection. Even if Jasper somehow succeeded in obtaining guardianship through the courts, he would find himself controlling two people with no legal access to the money he was trying to steal. "The beauty of this approach," Isabel explained, "is that his entire plan depends on accessing your assets through legal guardianship. When he discovers the money is protected by irrevocable trust structures, his criminal partners will realize they've wasted months on a worthless target." But protection wasn't enough for what I had in mind. "I want them prosecuted," I told her. "Not just stopped, destroyed. They've tortured my wife, threatened our safety, and they're part of a criminal organization that preys on other families." Isabel nodded approvingly. "I was hoping you'd say that. I have contacts at Adult Protective Services and the DA's office who specialize in elder abuse cases. With the evidence you've gathered, we can build a criminal case that will put them in prison and shut down Phoenix Grant's operation permanently." She picked up her phone and began making calls. Her Sunday morning transformed into a war room planning session. By noon, we had appointments scheduled with APS investigator Ember Jackson and Detective Knox Rivera from the Monterey County Sheriff's Elder Abuse Unit. Protection was just the beginning, I told Isabel as we finalized our strategy. Now I want justice. The afternoon sun was setting over Monterey Bay as Isabel and I shifted from defense to offense. Justice required more than legal protection. It demanded a perfectly orchestrated takedown that would expose their criminal conspiracy in the most public, humiliating way possible. "Ember Jackson from Adult Protective Services can be here in an hour," Isabel said, hanging up her phone. "She's one of the best investigators in the county, and she's handled cases involving Phoenix Grant before. Apparently, your son's attorney has been on their radar for months." Detective Knox Rivera arrived first, a 20-year veteran of the Monterey County Sheriff's Elder Abuse Unit, whose reputation for thorough investigations preceded him. As I walked him through the evidence I'd gathered, I watched his expression harden with each new revelation. "This is sophisticated," he said, studying the photographs of our tampered water system. "Most elder abuse cases are crimes of opportunity. This is a criminal enterprise with multiple moving parts and professional coordination. The strategy we developed was elegant in its simplicity. Monday morning, I would make my surprise return from Portland, timing my arrival to coincide with Jasper's planned tour of Sunset Manor, assisted living facility. Multiple agencies would arrive simultaneously: APS with an emergency welfare check warrant, sheriff's deputies with a utility tampering investigation, and utility company security with documentation of the systematic sabotage. The key is overwhelming them before they can destroy evidence or coordinate their stories," Detective Rivera explained. "We hit them with everything at once in full view of your neighbors and anyone else who happens to be watching." Ember Jackson proved to be exactly the kind of professional I'd hoped for. Methodical, experienced, and visibly angry about what had been done to Beatrice. "We'll need your wife's cooperation for the investigation," she told me. Is she prepared to testify about what they put her through? She's stronger than they gave her credit for, I replied, and she wants them held accountable. The bait strategy was my contribution to the plan. False bank documents showing an additional $800,000 in liquid assets. Property appraisals for Nevada land holdings worth $2.1 million. Medical records indicating Beatrice's rapid improvement and return to full cognitive function. All carefully placed where Jasper would discover them during his next visit to our house. He'll think he's hit the jackpot, I told the team. More money than he originally calculated, plus evidence that his mother is recovering faster than expected. It'll make him desperate to accelerate his timeline. Detective Rivera coordinated with the utility company's security division to document the water pressure manipulation with professional equipment. Choe President Margaret Chen agreed to file a formal complaint about suspicious activity at our address. Mrs. Henderson was briefed on her role as the primary witness to Beatrice's suffering. By 6 o'clock Sunday evening, every element was in position. Fake flight confirmations showing my return from Portland at 10:30 Monday morning. Hotel records in Portland to maintain the deception. Media contacts alerted to a potential elder abuse arrest in Carmel's exclusive residential district. Are you sure you want this level of public exposure? Isabel asked as we finalized the coordination. Once this hits the news, there's no going back to private family resolution. I thought about Beatrice crawling across our hardwood floor, desperate for water, while our son celebrated in the next room. They made this public when they decided to torture my wife. Now they'll face the consequences publicly. Monday morning, Jasper would learn what real power looked like. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only comes when months of careful planning converge into a single moment of reckoning. At exactly 11 o'clock, I pulled my Explorer into our circular driveway luggage visible in the back seat, playing the role of the surprised businessman returning from an unexpectedly shortened Portland trip. Through our front windows, I could see Jasper and Autumn in animated conversation with Beatrice, who sat in her wheelchair near the French doors, the same spot where I'd found her crawling for water just 3 days earlier. They were dressed professionally, clearly preparing for their planned tour of Sunset Manor, where they intended to deposit my wife while they liquidated our life's work. I stepped out of my car just as the first patrol unit rounded the corner onto our street, followed in perfect choreographed sequence by the Adult Protective Services van, the utility company security truck, and Detective Rivera's unmarked sedan. The timing was flawless, overwhelming force arriving at the precise moment when Jasper thought he was closest to success. "Dad," Jasper's voice cracked with shock as he opened our front door. "Your flight wasn't supposed to land until tonight? What are all these cars doing here?" I met his eyes with the cold satisfaction of a man who'd spent 38 years learning how to read people's intentions. "I've been watching you for 3 days, son. I know exactly what you've been doing to your mother." The color drained from his face as Ember Jackson approached, with her official APS identification and court-ordered emergency welfare check warrant. Behind her, Detective Rivera and 2 deputies moved with the practiced efficiency of professionals who'd executed similar operations dozens of times. "Mr. Blackwood Fiatbus," Ember addressed Jasper formally, "we're here to investigate reports of elder abuse and systematic neglect. We'll need to examine your mother and inspect the premises for evidence of unsafe living conditions." Autumn's composure cracked first. "This is insane," she stammered, her nurse's training warring with her panic. "We've been taking care of her. We were just taking her to see a nice facility where she could get better care." With water pressure deliberately reduced to force her to crawl across the floor, Detective Rivera's voice cut through her protests as utility company investigators wheeled their pressure testing equipment through our front door. "We have documentation of systematic tampering with residential utilities, ma'am. That's a felony." Our quiet Carmel Street transformed into a crime scene. Patrol cars with flashing lights drew neighbors from their morning routines. Mrs. Henderson emerged from her house with the satisfied expression of someone who'd been waiting for justice. Other neighbors gathered on sidewalks, smartphones, recording everything for social media posts that would spread through our exclusive community within hours. I watched Jasper's face as the scope of his downfall became clear, the evidence boxes being carried into our home, the professional investigators documenting his systematic torture of his own mother, the neighbors he'd grown up around witnessing his arrest, the career he'd built, The reputation he'd cultivated, the future he'd planned, all of it dissolving in real time. "This is a misunderstanding," he said desperately, his marketing skills failing him when he needed them most. "We were trying to help Mom and Dad. They're getting older, they need more support, and we thought, you thought you could torture my wife to steal our money?" I interrupted, my voice carrying across our front yard for everyone to hear. "You thought you could manipulate a woman recovering from back surgery to make her appear incompetent? You thought you could work with criminals to defraud your own parents." The handcuffs clicked shut around Jasper's wrists at 11:47, just as our neighbor's children were getting out of school and walking past our house. Autumn was placed in the back of a second patrol car, her nursing career ending with the same finality as her marriage. Watching my son's life collapse felt like victory and tragedy combined into something I'd never experienced before. The patrol cars had barely disappeared around the corner when the first news van pulled onto our street. Word travels fast in Carmel by the Sea, especially when it involves one of the community's established families, destroying itself in spectacular fashion. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, our quiet residential street had transformed into a media circus. Local television crews set up cameras across from our house, their reporters doing live broadcasts about the shocking elder abuse case that has rocked one of California's most exclusive coastal communities. I stood at our living room window, watching neighbors I'd known for years gather in small groups on sidewalks, their conversations animated by the kind of scandal that would dominate dinner party discussions for months to come. Property values in our neighborhood had always been a source of pride. Now residents worried about how the Blackwood situation might affect their investments. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, real estate agents, and curiosity seekers who'd somehow obtained our number. I'd turned off the ringer after the 15th call, but the voicemails kept accumulating. The immediate consequences were swift and merciless. Jasper's marketing firm released a statement before the 6 o'clock news announcing his termination, effective immediately due to criminal charges incompatible with our company values. Autumn's nursing supervisor at Community Hospital called to inform me that her license had been suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. Phoenix Grant's law firm was already under investigation by the State Bar Association, with 3 other families coming forward to report similar, compassionate family transition schemes targeting their elderly relatives. The attorney's professional reputation was disintegrating as quickly as his business model. Detective Rivera stopped by around 4:30 to update me on the charges. "Your son is looking at multiple felonies: utility, tampering, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud. Your daughter-in-law faces similar charges plus evidence tampering related to those staged videos. We're also coordinating with federal authorities because of the interstate gambling debts and criminal organizations involved." The media coverage was relentless but necessary. Channel 7's evening broadcast featured expert interviews about guardianship fraud, warning signs families should watch for, and resources for reporting suspected elder abuse. Our family's nightmare was becoming a cautionary tale that might protect other vulnerable seniors. Beatrice surprised everyone with her strength during the media attention. When reporters requested a statement, she appeared on our front steps, with the dignity that had attracted me to her 40 years earlier. "My husband and I want other families to understand that elder abuse can happen to anyone," she said, her voice steady despite everything she'd endured. "We were fortunate to have resources and support. Many elderly victims don't. We will prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law, not for revenge, but to protect other seniors from similar predators." The community response was overwhelming. Mrs. Henderson organized a neighborhood support network for elderly residents. The HOA scheduled emergency meetings about security measures and wellness checks. Local banks began offering seminars about protecting assets from family fraud. But as evening settled over our house and the media crews finally packed up their equipment, the victory felt hollow. Our dining room table, where Jasper and Autumn had shared Sunday dinners for 4 years, sat empty. The guest bedroom, where they'd stayed during holidays, would remain vacant. The grandchildren we'd hoped to spoil would grow up knowing their father had tried to steal from their grandparents. I found Beatrice in our bedroom, sitting quietly in her chair by the window watching the last news van drive away. "Do you regret it?" she asked without looking at me. I considered the question carefully. "I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret that we did it. The hardest part wasn't watching them fall. It was accepting that I'd pushed them." 6 months later, I sat in the Monterey County Courthouse, watching my son receive his final sentence. The man in orange prison clothes bore little resemblance to the confident marketing executive who'd once celebrated in our living room while his mother crawled for water. Judge Patricia Martinez delivered the verdict that would define Jasper's life. 4 years in state prison for elder abuse, utility, tampering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. $62,000 restitution, permanent exclusion from inheritance rights, 10-year restraining order prohibiting contact with victims. Jasper's shoulders sagged as handcuffs clicked shut. No apology, no admission of guilt, no acknowledgement of the pain he'd caused. Just the hollow expression of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Autumn received 18 months with parole eligibility in 12. Her nursing license was permanently revoked, ending the career she'd spent years building. The woman who'd used medical training to create fake evidence would never work in healthcare again. Phoenix Grant's destruction was perhaps most satisfying. Law license suspended indefinitely. Practice bankrupt reputation destroyed by state bar investigations, revealing elder abuse schemes across multiple counties. 3 other families had come forward with similar stories. The gambling debts were resolved through prison violence. Jasper suffered what officials termed accidents, broken ribs, concussion injuries that spoke to debts collected through brutality. I felt no sympathy. He'd chosen to work with predators. Beatrice and I made our position clear through public statement. Some betrayals destroy the possibility of redemption. We will have no contact with these criminals. Family relationships cannot excuse systematic torture. The case became a national conversation about elder abuse. Legislative hearings cited our experience as precedent for guardianship reform. Professional training programs now include modules about recognizing family-based financial abuse. We established the Elder Protection Foundation with $500,000 from our estate funding, legal aid for elderly victims, and community education programs. Every week brought new cases. Adult children stealing from aging parents, caregivers exploiting vulnerable seniors, legal professionals preying on families in crisis. Beatrice recovered completely from both surgery and psychological trauma. Our marriage emerged stronger after being tested by betrayal and public scrutiny. The Foundation's office became our second home counseling other elderly couples facing similar threats. 3 years after sentencing, we sat in our Foundation office with another elderly couple whose adult son had been systematically draining their accounts, while convincing them they were losing mental capacity. The tactics were identical: manipulation, isolation, false medical evidence, criminal legal assistance. But this family would be protected. The predators would be prosecuted. Justice would be served. Our personal nightmare had become a shield for other vulnerable seniors. We'd learned that love your family doesn't mean accepting cruelty. Some people forfeit their right to family protection when they harm the innocent. True justice prevents future victims rather than just punishing past crimes. The Foundation's success was measured in families protected and criminals prosecuted. We'd turned betrayal into protection for others. Today, Beatrice and I sleep peacefully, knowing predators face real consequences. We've built a legacy of protection rather than just wealth. Our story serves as both warning and hope. Families can survive even the deepest betrayals when justice is pursued without compromise. Family doesn't excuse cruelty. Love doesn't require enabling evil. And sometimes the greatest act of love is ensuring those who would harm the innocent face the full weight of justice. Looking back at this true story, I realize how close we came to losing everything. Not just our money, but our dignity and safety. If you're a grandparent watching this, please don't make the mistakes I almost made. Don't ignore the warning signs just because they come from family. Don't let love blind you to manipulation. The hardest lesson from these grandpa stories is that trust must be earned continuously, even from our own children. I trusted Jasper completely because he was my son, not because he'd proven himself worthy of that trust. God gave us wisdom for a reason. We must use it to protect ourselves and our spouses, even when it means suspecting those we love most. This true story taught me that protecting the vulnerable isn't just about family. It's about society. When we allow elder abuse to continue unchecked, we fail not only our own families, but our entire community. God calls us to be guardians of the innocent, and sometimes that means making painful decisions about our own children. Don't wait until you're crawling across your floor, desperate for water. Don't wait until your utilities are tampered with or your assets are researched by criminals. If something feels wrong, investigate immediately. These grandpa stories exist to warn you. Predators often wear familiar faces and speak with voices you've loved for decades. The foundation we built serves families facing similar betrayals. But prevention is always better than prosecution. Trust your instincts. Verify everything. Keep your financial information private, even from adult children. And remember that God's justice sometimes requires us to choose difficult paths that protect the innocent over preserving family harmony. Your safety and dignity matter more than anyone's feelings, including your children's. This true story proves that sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no to those who would harm you. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to dangers you hadn't considered, please share it with other families who need this warning. Leave a comment below about your own experiences with family trust and protection. And don't forget to subscribe to our "Get out, old man, you're dead weight," my son screamed, abandoning me in the blazing Arizona desert after I refused to give him $95,000. For 35 years, I'd sacrificed everything for Austin, believing love would build an unbreakable bond. As I sat dying in that bus shelter, a sleek black sedan appeared. An elegant woman stepped out, her eyes holding dangerous secrets. "Are you all right?" she asked with impossible certainty in her voice. What happened next would expose a 20-year conspiracy and prove that my son's betrayal was just the beginning of something much darker. If you still believe that loyalty is worth more than money, leave the word family in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across my kitchen table in Phoenix. At 65, I cherished these quiet moments. Newspaper pages rustling, Colombian coffee steaming, the distant hum of early commuters. As a retired obstetrician who had delivered over 3,000 babies, I had earned these peaceful mornings. But peace, I was about to learn, is just the calm before the storm. Austin's footsteps thundered down the stairs. My 35-year-old son appeared in the doorway, disheveled and desperate. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his expensive shirt wrinkled as if he had slept in it. "Dad, I need $95,000 today or I lose everything." The newspaper crinkled in my hands. This scene felt painfully familiar. The desperation, the avoided eye contact, the trembling hands that spoke of sleepless nights. "Austin, I've already helped you 3 times before," I said, setting down my coffee. "The restaurant, the tech startup, the construction business, they all failed." His face flushed red. "Those weren't failures, Dad. They were learning experiences. Learning experiences that cost me nearly $200,000. I can't keep throwing money at your dreams, son. You never supported my dreams." Austin slammed his palm against the doorframe. "Every time I come to you, you shoot it down. You never believed in me." The accusation stung because it held truth. After watching him fail repeatedly, I had grown cautious. "Austin, sit down. Let's talk calmly." "There's no time." He paced like a caged animal. "The investors are meeting today. If I don't show up with the money, they'll give the deal to someone else." I studied my son's face, searching for the little boy who used to build sandcastles with me at Tempe Town Lake. When had those innocent dreams turned into desperate schemes? What kind of deal requires $95,000 upfront? Real estate development, luxury condos in Scottsdale. "We're talking millions, Dad." The same promise he had made with every failed venture. "Austin, I can't." "Fine." Something cold flickered in his eyes. "Then come with me. Meet the investors yourself. See what you're passing up." The rational part of my mind warned against it, but the father in me wanted to understand what drove my son to these extremes. "All right," I said, pushing back from the table, "but I'm not promising anything." Austin's face brightened for the first time in weeks. "Great. We need to leave now." I reached for my wallet, but Austin was already heading toward the door. "Dad, come on. We're just going for a quick meeting. You don't need all that stuff." Something in his urgency made me pause, but his hopeful expression melted my resistance. This was my son, my only child. I followed him to his silver BMW, sliding into the passenger seat. The morning air was already warming another scorching desert day ahead. As we pulled out of my driveway toward Phoenix's outskirts, Austin fell into unusual silence. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, jaw set in determination. 45 minutes later, as the city gave way to empty desert landscape, I began to wonder where exactly we were going. The desert heat slammed into my face like opening an oven door. Austin pulled the BMW to a stop beside a weathered bus shelter that looked abandoned for decades. Rusted metal posts held up a corrugated roof, and the concrete bench was cracked and sun-bleached. This wasn't any investor meeting location. "Get out, old man." The words hit harder than the Arizona sun. I stared at my son, searching for any sign this was a cruel joke. But Austin's eyes were cold, distant, like looking at a stranger. "Austin, what the hell are you doing?" "You're dead weight," he said flatly. "I'm starting fresh without you." My heart hammered. "Son, there's nothing out here but desert." "Exactly." He reached across and opened my door. "Figure out your own problems for once." The betrayal cut deeper than any scalpel. This was the boy I had taught to ride a bicycle, whose college tuition I had paid without question. "Austin, I'm your father." "You're nothing but a burden. I'm done with you." I stumbled out, legs unsteady on scorching asphalt. Before I could process what was happening, Austin gunned the engine. Gravel sprayed as the BMW shot forward, disappearing around a distant curve. The silence was deafening. I stood waiting for the sound of his return. Surely this was just Austin making a point. Any moment he would come back apologetic and embarrassed. But the desert remained empty. Reality sank in like heat through my shoes. No wallet, no phone, no water. The nearest building was 10 miles back, and the temperature was climbing toward 110 degrees. I collapsed onto the concrete bench in the shelter's meager shade. The metal roof radiated heat like a furnace, but it beat direct sunlight. 35 years of birthday parties and Christmas mornings of scraped knees and proudly watching him graduate. 35 years of believing blood meant something. A pickup truck appeared. I waved frantically, but it roared past, leaving me choking on dust. Then a sedan. Same result. Then a delivery van that ignored my existence entirely. My mouth felt like sandpaper. Sweat poured down my face, but I knew that meant dehydration in this furnace. As a doctor, I understood I was in serious trouble. The sun climbed higher, turning the desert into shimmering heat waves. My vision blurred at the edges, heat exhaustion creeping through my system. 2 hours passed like eternity. I had stopped waving at cars. Drivers probably assumed I was just another desert vagrant. My head lolled back against the metal shelter. This was how it would end. Not in a hospital bed surrounded by loved ones, but alone in the Arizona desert, abandoned by the sun I had sacrificed everything for. The sound of an engine made me open my eyes. A sleek black sedan was slowing down its tinted windows, reflecting the desert like dark mirrors. For the first time in 2 hours, hope flickered in my chest. The car door opened with a soft click, and an elegant woman stepped onto the desert pavement. Despite the brutal heat, she appeared completely composed, silver hair, in a perfect bob, cream-colored linen suit unwrinkled. She moved with quiet authority. Behind her, a tall man in a dark suit emerged from the driver's seat, surveying the area with practiced security, awareness. "Are you okay?" Her voice carried a refined southern accent, genuine concern evident as she approached the bus shelter. I struggled to stand, legs shaky from heat exhaustion. I think so. Just stranded? "I'm Evelyn Harrington." She extended a manicured hand. "What's your name, dear?" "Mike Turner. I'm a retired doctor." Her eyebrows raised slightly. "Dr. Turner, what happened here? You look like you've been in the sun for hours." I found myself explaining about Austin, the supposed investor meeting my abandonment. Mrs. Harrington listened without interruption, concern creasing her eyes. "Gregory," she said to her driver, "please bring Dr. Turner water." The man returned with a chilled bottle that felt like salvation. I drank greedily cold liquid, soothing my parched throat. "How did you happen to find me out here?" "I was returning from a charity board meeting in Tucson. We take this route to avoid highway traffic." Her tone was matter-of-fact. "You can't stay in this heat. Come with us." Part of me hesitated. Accepting help from strangers went against every instinct. But the alternative was potentially dying here. The drive to Scottsdale passed in air-conditioned comfort. Her estate was breathtaking, a sprawling adobe mansion surrounded by meticulously maintained desert landscaping. "Maria will show you to the guest room," she said as we entered a foyer with 20-foot ceilings. "Fresh clothes are in the closet. Take all the time you need." The guest suite was larger than my kitchen. I showered off desert dust and grime, marveling at how quickly circumstances had changed. 2 hours ago, I was dying in heat. Now I was in luxury, rivaling the finest hotels. Maria had prepared a light meal. Mrs. Harrington joined me in an elegant dining room overlooking a sparkling pool. "Feeling better? Much thanks to your kindness. I still can't believe my luck that you drove by." "I do considerable charity work, Dr. Turner. I help people in difficult situations when I can." She sipped iced tea thoughtfully. Good people sometimes find themselves in impossible circumstances through no fault of their own. We ate in comfortable silence. She didn't pry about my family situation or ask uncomfortable questions. Her discretion was as refreshing as her generosity. As evening approached, she found me on the terrace, watching sunset paint the desert mountains orange and purple. "Stay tonight," she said, not really a request. "Tomorrow we'll figure out your situation. Gregory can drive you wherever needed. Mrs. Harrington, I can't thank you enough. Evelyn, please. And you don't need to thank me. Sometimes we all need a helping hand." That night, lying in the most comfortable bed I had experienced in years, I felt truly safe, for the first time since Austin drove away. Whatever tomorrow brought, at least I wasn't facing it alone. Morning came with Arizona sunshine streaming through the guest room windows. Gregory appeared at breakfast, car keys in hand, ready to drive me wherever I needed to go. Evelyn had insisted I take her card and promised we would stay in touch. "Where to Dr. Turner?" Gregory asked as we settled into the black sedan. "My house first, please. I need to see what's left of my life." The drive back to Phoenix felt surreal after the luxury of Scottsdale. My modest neighborhood looked shabbier than I remembered, the desert landscaping brown and neglected compared to Evelyn's manicured estate. Gregory pulled into my driveway and I approached the front door with growing unease. Something felt wrong? The porch light was off and newspapers were scattered on the walkway as if no one lived here anymore. I inserted my key into the lock and turned. Nothing. I tried again, jiggling the key, but it wouldn't budge. The lock had been changed. "Excuse me, Dr. Turner." I turned to see Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor of 15 years, approaching with a concerned expression. She clutched a gardening trowel in her weathered hands. "Austin told us you moved to a nursing home," she said hesitantly. "He said your memory was getting bad and it wasn't safe for you to live alone anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I never moved anywhere. Austin abandoned me in the desert yesterday." Her face creased with confusion and worry. "But he seemed so concerned about you. He had official-looking papers." I left her standing there, walking quickly toward my medical practice 2 blocks away. My legs felt unsteady, but anger was beginning to replace shock. What kind of game was Austin playing? The familiar sight of my clinic should have been comforting, but something was wrong here too. A new sign hung in the window, "Under new management." I tried my key. Again, nothing. I knocked firmly on the glass door. After a moment, it opened to reveal Austin standing there with a young woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful in an artificial way. Perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothes, and calculating eyes that seemed to catalog every detail about me. "You must be Dr. Turner," she said with a smile that never reached those cold eyes. "I'm Amanda Foster." Austin's expression was harder than I had ever seen it. Gone was any trace of the son who had asked me for help just yesterday morning. "Dad, you need to sign these transfer papers," he said, holding out a manila folder. "Austin, what is this? Why did you change the locks?" "Because you're a criminal, Dad. A murderer." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I stared at my son, searching for any sign that this was some kind of sick joke. "We have evidence of your crimes," Amanda said smoothly, her voice carrying an undertone of satisfaction. "You killed someone, Dad. An innocent person died because of you." My world tilted on its axis. "What, Austin? I never killed anyone." "Stop lying." His voice cracked with emotion, whether genuine or performed, I couldn't tell. "I've seen the evidence. You're a killer." Amanda stepped forward, opening the folder to reveal official-looking documents. "The paperwork proves everything, Dr. Turner." I tried to read the papers, but my vision was blurring with shock and confusion. Transfer agreements for both my house and clinic, selling everything for $75,000, a fraction of their actual worth. "Sign these papers and disappear," Austin said, his voice steady now, "or face murder charges." "I don't know what you're talking about." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, high and desperate. Austin's face showed no mercy, no recognition of the man who had raised him, who had sacrificed everything for his future. "Then you'll rot in prison for murder." I stumbled backward, away from the clinic that had been my life's work, away from the son who had become a stranger. The accusations echoed in my mind as I walked back toward Gregory's waiting car. Murder, killer, criminal. What evidence could they possibly have? What innocent person was I supposed to have killed? And why was Austin so convinced of my guilt? "Gregory, I need to make a phone call," I said, sliding into the back seat with trembling hands. He handed me a secure phone without question. I dialed Evelyn's number. "Dr. Turner, how did things go?" "Evelyn, I need help. Something terrible is happening." I explained the changed locks, Austin's murder accusations, Amanda Foster's documents. "Come back immediately." she said without hesitation. An hour later, I sat in Evelyn's study, watching her face grow grave as I recounted the morning's events. She examined photos of the transfer documents Gregory had helped me take. "This sounds like a coordinated attack," she said. "You need legal help now." She dialed from memory. "Benjamin, it's Evelyn Harrington. I have an urgent situation." "Yes, today." Within 2 hours, a distinguished man in his 50s arrived. Benjamin Hayes moved with confident precision, his silver hair perfectly groomed, expensive suit, speaking of legal success. "Dr. Turner," he said, examining the document photos with a magnifying glass. "Professional forgery. Whoever did this has access to high-quality equipment and considerable expertise. Someone planned this very carefully. Tell me about Amanda Foster." "I'd never seen her before today. She seemed to know Austin well." Benjamin made several quick calls. Background checks, property records, political connections. "Amanda Foster is Mayor Charles Foster's daughter," he announced 20 minutes later. "The mayor's held office 8 months campaigning on law and order." My stomach dropped. A mayor's daughter meant political implications. "Mayor Foster has significant influence over local law enforcement," Benjamin continued grimly. "If they're planning murder charges, they'll have the city's full weight behind them." "But I haven't murdered anyone." "I believe you, Dr. Turner. But belief won't matter with fabricated evidence. We need to identify exactly what murder they're accusing you of." Evelyn leaned forward. "What are our options?" "First, identify the alleged victim and circumstances. Then find evidence proving Dr. Turner's innocence before they issue an arrest warrant." He turned to me, seriously. "Any idea who you supposedly killed patients who died under your care malpractice suits?" I searched my memory desperately. 40 years of delivering babies there had been complications, emergencies, tragic outcomes no doctor could prevent. But murder. "There were difficult cases over the years," I said slowly. "Emergency situations where mothers or babies didn't survive despite everything we did. Medical tragedies, not crimes. Think specifically about any Foster family connection," Benjamin urged. "This coordination suggests personal vendetta, not random targeting." Foster. The name nagged at something in my memory, but I couldn't grasp it. "We're running out of time," Benjamin said, gathering papers. "If they're moving this aggressively, they plan to arrest you soon. I'll research immediately, but Dr. Turner, prepare for the possibility you'll be taken into custody before we can build your defense." The weight of conspiracy pressed down like desert heat. This wasn't just Austin's betrayal anymore. This was something much larger and more dangerous. The next morning, hope cut through my dread. Over coffee, a memory surfaced my old medical files from early practice years. I had given them to my brother Thomas for safekeeping when I moved offices 15 years ago. "I need to visit my brother in Tempe," I told Evelyn. "He might have records that could help." Gregory drove me to Thomas's modest ranch house. My older brother, 68, had always been the cautious one, a retired accountant who kept meticulous records of everything. Thomas answered, looking older than his years, face lighting up, then creasing with concern. "Mike, I heard rumors about trouble. Come in." In his cluttered living room, surrounded by boxes of documents, I explained the murder accusations, Austin's betrayal, the mayor's involvement. "Austin's gone too far," Thomas said, shaking his head. "That boy always had more ambition than sense." "Thomas, I need those old medical files you're storing. There might be something proving my innocence." "Of course," he said without hesitation. "They're in the garage, organized by year. I'll keep them safe for your defense." Relief flooded through me. Finally, family support. "Thank you, Thomas. I knew I could count on you. You're my brother Mike. We stick together." I spent the afternoon going through boxes, with Thomas looking for anything relating to the Foster family. We found nothing obvious, but having the files secure felt like victory. That evening at Evelyn's reviewing Benjamin's research, my phone rang. Thomas's name appeared. "Mike, I'm sorry. I can't help you." His voice trembled with fear. "What's wrong?" "Mayor Foster came this afternoon. He knows about my gambling debts." My heart sank. Thomas had struggled with gambling addiction for years, our family's secret shame. He paid off $50,000 I owed to dangerous people. Thomas continued, voice breaking. "People who would have hurt me, maybe killed me. Thomas, we can figure this out. He has photographs of me at illegal gambling dens, video surveillance. If that gets out, I'll go to prison." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Not Thomas. Not my brother. "I already gave him all your medical files," he whispered. "I'm sorry, Mike, but I chose my freedom over yours. Thomas, you're my brother. I know what I am. he said with self-loathing. A coward and gambling addict who chose to save his own skin. I can't live with it, but I can't go to prison either. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling the last pillar of my old life crumble. Austin had abandoned me. Thomas had betrayed me. The medical records that might have saved me were now in my enemy's hands. Evelyn found me sitting in the dark study an hour later. What's happened? My brother, I said hollowly. He sold me out. Foster has all the medical files now. She sat across from me, face grave in lamplight. Then we'll find another way. You're not alone in this. But I felt more alone than ever. My family had chosen self-interest over blood, over loyalty, over everything I thought we stood for. The conspiracy wasn't just closing in from outside, it had infected my own family. Turning brother against brother with surgical precision. The pounding on Evelyn's front door came at 7 a.m, sharp and official. I was barely awake when Maria rushed into the guest room, her face pale with worry. Dr. Turner, the police are here. Many police. Through the bedroom window, I could see 3 squad cars in the circular driveway, their red and blue lights painting the adobe walls in ominous colors. This was it, the moment Benjamin had warned me about. Detective Johnson stood on the front porch, a tall man with graying temples and the weathered face of someone who had seen too much. He held an official document in his hands. Dr. Michael Turner, you're wanted for questioning regarding the death of Mrs. Elizabeth Foster. We have a warrant to bring you in for investigation. The name hit me like lightning. Elizabeth Foster. Images flooded back, a young woman with complications, a difficult delivery 20 years ago, a husband pacing frantically in the waiting room. Elizabeth Foster, I whispered. I delivered her baby 20 years ago. We've received serious allegations about your conduct during that delivery, Detective Johnson said. You need to come with us. The pieces fell into place. Amanda Foster, the baby I had delivered. Mayor Charles Foster, the grieving husband who had blamed me for his wife's death. 20 years of planning. 20 years of waiting for the right moment to destroy me. At the police station, they led me through a corridor, lined with curious officers. In the interrogation room, Mayor Foster was waiting. He looked older than I remembered, his hair completely gray now, but his eyes burned with the same fury I had seen 2 decades ago. Dr. Turner, he said as I entered, you killed my wife with your incompetence. Mr. Foster, your wife had severe heart disease. I warned you about the risks. You should have refused to deliver the baby. His voice cracked with emotion. You killed her for money. You proceeded because you cared more about your fee than her safety. That's not true. Elizabeth wanted the baby. She insisted on proceeding despite the risks. Detective Johnson spread my old medical files across the tables, the ones Thomas had given them. But the pages looked different, highlighted sections taken out of context, crucial notes missing. These records suggest a pattern of reckless behavior, the detective said, proceeding with high-risk deliveries, despite obvious dangers. Those files have been altered, I protested, but even as I said it, I knew how desperate it sounded. The interrogation room door opened, and Austin walked in with Amanda. My son's face was stone cold, showing no recognition of the man who had raised him. He needs to face what he did, Austin said to the detective. My father has been running from this for 20 years. Amanda stood beside him, her hand on his arm in a gesture of support. She looked exactly like her mother had at that age, the same delicate features, the same blonde hair. But where Elizabeth had been kind and frightened, Amanda was calculating and cold. You destroyed my family, she said to me. You killed my mother, and now it's time for justice. Austin, you know me, I pleaded with my son. I'm not a killer. I know what the evidence shows, he replied. I know what Mayor Foster has told me about that night. You made critical errors that cost a woman her life. I did everything medically possible to save both mother and child. But I could see in his eyes that he had already decided. Mayor Foster had poisoned him against me with 20 years' worth of carefully crafted lies. We're holding you pending further investigation, Detective Johnson announced. Given the seriousness of these allegations and your recent erratic behavior, you're considered a flight risk. They led me to a holding cell, and I sat on the narrow cot, staring at the concrete walls. The conspiracy was complete now. They had my son, my brother, my medical records, and a 20-year-old tragedy to use as their weapon. Mayor Foster had waited patiently for his revenge, building his political power until he could strike with impunity, and I had walked right into his trap, led by my own son's betrayal. The guard's footsteps echoed down the corridor as visiting hours began. I had been sitting in the holding cell for nearly 12 hours, replaying every moment of Elizabeth Foster's delivery, searching my memory for any detail that might save me. "Turner, you have a visitor." Evelyn sat across from me in the sterile visiting room, separated by reinforced glass. She looked different somehow, not the kindly charity worker who had rescued me from the desert, but someone with steel in her spine and authority in her bearing. "Mike, I haven't been completely honest about who I really am." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to ensure privacy despite the glass barrier. I served as Arizona's senator from 1995 to 2010. 15 years in Washington, specializing in healthcare policy and government oversight. My mouth fell open. Senator Evelyn Harrington. I should have recognized the name, but grief and desperation had clouded my thinking. "Yet I have direct connections to Governor Robert Harrison and the FBI," she continued. "I've been investigating Mayor Foster's corruption for months, long before I met you. You've been investigating him. Charles Foster has been taking kickbacks from construction companies, manipulating city contracts, and using his office for personal vendettas. Your case just gave me the final piece of evidence I needed." She pulled out a secure phone and dialed a number from memory. "Michael, it's Evelyn Harrington. We need to move on the Foster situation tonight." "Yes, I have the evidence package. Dr. Turner is ready to cooperate." Within an hour, FBI agent Michael Brooks arrived at the police station. He was younger than I expected, with sharp eyes and the confident bearing of federal authority. Detective Johnson's demeanor changed completely when Agent Brooks showed his credentials. "We're taking over this investigation," Agent Brooks announced. "This is now a federal matter involving public corruption and civil rights violations. We need medical experts to review Mrs. Foster's case," Evelyn said as they processed my release. The original medical records show clear evidence of congenital heart disease that made pregnancy extremely dangerous. Agent Brooks nodded. "We've already contacted cardiac specialists at Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic. They'll review the complete medical file, the real one, not the altered version Mayor Foster has been using." "How did you get the real files?" I asked. "I've had them for years," Evelyn said with a slight smile. "Benjamin Hayes wasn't just your lawyer, he was gathering evidence for my investigation. We knew Foster would eventually make a move against you." The pieces clicked into place. My rescue from the desert hadn't been coincidence, it had been orchestrated. "You've been watching me." "Watching over you," she corrected. "Charles Foster has been planning this revenge for 20 years. We've been planning to stop him for 6 months. Agent Brooks handed me a document. "This gives us grounds for a federal investigation into Mayor Foster's abuse of power, conspiracy, and violation of your civil rights. The medical evidence will prove Mrs. Foster's death was unavoidable given her condition." "What happens now?" "Tomorrow we present the real medical evidence at City Hall," Evelyn said. "Governor Harrison is sending a federal medical examiner to review the case publicly. Mayor Foster's 20-year lie is about to be exposed." As we walked out of the police station, I felt overwhelmed by the scope of what Evelyn had revealed. She wasn't just a wealthy philanthropist, she was a former senator with the power to bring down corrupt officials. "Why didn't you tell me who you were from the beginning?" "Because you needed to be genuine in your reactions," she said. "If you had known about the investigation, Foster's people might have detected the deception. Your authentic desperation and confusion were crucial to drawing them out." The final confrontation was set. Tomorrow, 20 years of lies would meet the full power of federal oversight, and Mayor Foster would face the consequences of his obsessive quest for revenge. But first, I had to prepare to face my son one more time and try to break through the wall of deception that had turned him against me. Phoenix City Hall buzzed with activity as news crews set up cameras and reporters jostled for position. Word had leaked about the federal investigation, and the public demanded answers. I stood beside Evelyn and Agent Brooks, watching Mayor Foster arrive with his legal team, his face a mask of defiant composure. Austin was there too, standing with Amanda near the back of the packed auditorium. He looked older than his 35 years, the weight of recent events etched in the lines around his eyes. Agent Brooks stepped to the podium, his voice cutting through the crowd's murmur. "The FBI has concluded its investigation into allegations of public corruption and abuse of power by Mayor Charles Foster. We have also reviewed the medical case involving Mrs. Elizabeth Foster's death 20 years ago." A federal medical examiner, Dr. Genevieve Porter, from Johns Hopkins, approached the microphone with a thick file of documents. "Mrs. Elizabeth Foster suffered from severe congenital heart disease," she announced, her voice clinical and precise. "The medical records clearly show that Dr. Turner advised against pregnancy multiple times, citing the extreme risks to both mother and child. The auditorium fell silent except for the clicking of cameras. Mayor Foster insisted on proceeding despite repeated medical warnings. Mrs. Foster's death was inevitable given her cardiac condition. Dr. Turner's care met all professional standards, and no reasonable physician could have prevented this tragedy. Mayor Foster's composure cracked. His shoulders sagged as 20 years of carefully constructed lies crumbled around him. I just needed someone to blame, he said, his voice barely audible. I couldn't accept that I pushed her to have the baby. I couldn't live with the guilt, so I made Dr. Turner carry it instead. Amanda Foster stood up in the back of the room, tears streaming down her face. Dad, you destroyed an innocent man's life, she said, her voice breaking. You built your entire career on a lie, and you turned me into part of that lie. Austin moved toward me, then his face pale and stricken. The confident young man who had demanded money just days ago was gone, replaced by someone who looked broken and lost. Dad, I'm so sorry. I believed their lies about you. I looked at my son, really looked at him for the first time since this nightmare began. Part of me wanted to forgive him immediately to restore our family and pretend none of this had happened. But the desert heat was still fresh in my memory, along with his cold words calling me a murderer. Austin, you abandoned me in the desert to die. I said, my voice steady but cold. You called me a killer. You tried to steal everything I built with my own hands. Dad, please, I was manipulated. Being manipulated doesn't excuse betrayal, I replied. You chose money over your father. You chose to believe the worst about me without even asking for my side of the story. Austin's face crumpled, and he began to cry. Not the calculated tears of manipulation, but the genuine sobs of someone facing the magnitude of their mistakes. I may forgive you someday, I continued, but not today. You need to earn it back. You need to prove that you're the man I raised you to be, not the person greed turned you into. Agent Brooks announced the arrests, Mayor Foster for corruption and abuse of power, several city officials for conspiracy, and charges were being considered against others who had participated in the cover-up. As the crowd dispersed and the cameras packed up, I found myself standing alone with Evelyn in the emptying auditorium. You have your life back, she said simply. Most of it, I agreed, looking toward the exit where Austin had disappeared. Some things can't be undone with a federal investigation. Family relationships take time to heal, Evelyn said. If they heal at all. I retrieved my house keys from the evidence locker that afternoon and drove through my old neighborhood. Everything looked the same, but I felt like a different person. Someone who had learned that the people you trust most can become your greatest enemies, and that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources. Austin would have to find his own way back to being someone worthy of forgiveness, and I would have to learn whether a father's love could survive a son's ultimate betrayal. The desert had taught me that survival sometimes means walking away from everything you thought you knew. Today I was finally free to discover who I really was. Looking back on this journey, I realize how easily trust can be weaponized against us. I spent 65 years believing that family bonds were unbreakable, that blood meant loyalty, that love could overcome any obstacle. The desert taught me otherwise. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the red flags when someone repeatedly asks for money without accountability. Don't enable destructive behavior in the name of love. I gave Austin everything he wanted instead of everything he needed, and that difference nearly cost me everything. This true story taught me that God tests us not through our successes, but through our deepest betrayals. When Austin left me to die in that Arizona heat, I thought God had abandoned me too. But Grandpa stories like mine aren't just about the fall. They're about who catches you when you're broken. Evelyn appeared like an angel when I needed her most. Sometimes God sends help through the most unexpected people, while those we trust most become our greatest trials. The Lord works in mysterious ways, using even our pain for a greater purpose. The hardest lesson. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending betrayal never happened. True story, some relationships may never fully heal, and that's okay. God gave us wisdom to protect ourselves, not just hearts to forgive blindly. Grandpa stories teach us that family isn't just about DNA. It's about who stands by you when the world falls apart. True story. Sometimes the family that matters most isn't the one you're born into. To other fathers reading this, love your children, but don't sacrifice your dignity on the altar of their greed. Set boundaries. Demand respect. Grandpa stories are filled with men who gave everything and received nothing in return. God blessed me with a second chance, but not everyone gets one. Learn from my mistakes before it's too late. What do you think? Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Share your thoughts in the comments below your story. Might help someone else avoid the same heartbreak. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories that remind us of life's most important lessons. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss these meaningful grandpa stories that can change how you see family trust and forgiveness.